Welcome to Journey On. I'm your host, Brianna Gray. We have a long overdue guest, a Marine Corps vet who served alongside my brother in Okinawa, Japan. He enlisted in 2003 and got out as corporal in 2008. While he was serving and being front and center, his OMC won the drill competition and was recognized in the local newspaper. He's one sales professional you'd least want to sell against for Heister Yale. He started training in jiu-jitsu in 2021 and within 2 years became a coach and is a purple belt. Please help me in welcoming the shortest and feistiest Marine you'll ever meet, my unofficial adopted brother, Dave Mench.
How's everybody doing? Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
of
Yeah,
course.
it's
So before, I don't want to get into like the nitty gritty of of any of like the questions yet. So the story is gonna follow me forever. Is the first time me and you actually like hung out and all that came about. You actually need to like help my memory because after my kids, my memory's like right. But all I remember is my brother calls my mom and is like, I have a Marine out there that doesn't have family. He's coming to stay like pretty much with you guys. And then who knows how long after it could have been hours, it could have been days that like, here's a knock at the door and here's Dave Mench. And then
that's
and then
pretty
from
much how it
there
went down.
came the okay. Okay. And then I don't even remember if it was like that night or what, but you had your rental and I thought I was going to be like so cool. And this had to have been like 2006, right?
It was like
Or
2007. So I came
2005.
back. It was 2007. I came back in from Okinawa in 2006, and then I was in
Okay.
Lejeune for a bit, and then I got sent over to 29 Palms for some training, and I was there for about like 6 to 8 months. And I remember Dave was telling me, he's like, "Oh yeah, just meet up with me." I'm like, "All right, well, what's their number?" So he's like, "I'll let you know. Don't worry about it. I'll set it all up. Here's the address. Just go." Of course. So I'm like, all right, yeah, no problem. So, I drove up. I don't even remember if I went to, no, I didn't go to your house. I went to somebody else. I went to your friend's houses, I think, that I picked you up at. Because when we were going to your mom's.
Oh, I don't even remember that. That's funny.
Yeah, because I picked you up somewhere and then one of your friends made like a funny joke and they're like, how do you know you're picking up the right person? I'm like, yeah, my boy sent me here. I know I'm at the right place. So,
Yeah.
so then we ended up driving, we're going to your mom's. What was it? Rancho Cucamonga, I think it was, we were going to.
No, in Fallbrook. It was that little cottage, like that 2-bedroom type
Yeah,
cottage.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was the cottage, yes. So I remember going to Fallbrook, and then you're like, "Oh, I gotta put on makeup real quick," because your boyfriend was like gonna meet us there or something, and like you just had this makeup in your hand in the rental car and just spilled it all over the place. And then you're like
Oh gosh,
apologizing, and
I
I'm just
know. And
laughing
it was like
hysterically.
bright.
It was like pink or something. It was crazy colors.
Well, and especially like for who knows what the ages are that view this, but like during that time is like when you had to clean the rentals before you returned them. Not like
Oh yeah,
nowadays where
absolutely.
they have like detailers and stuff. So it's like whatever you brought it back as. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just met, my brother's friend. And then here I am like destroying his rental. Like they're probably going to be like, this poor Marine is a drag queen on the weekends or something.
Hey, you gotta make some money. Anything helps, right? Especially then, we were broke. Like that was making what, like not even $30,000 a year. 20
Yeah.
bucks is 20 bucks.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was terrible. I felt so bad. I was like, "Oh my god." I never even like asked you after that like, did you ever get in trouble for that?" I'm just like, "Bye.
I
See you
like see
later."
you later now. I'm like, yeah, just dropped it off. We were good.
Yeah.
Oh, we
And
got
then
lucky
what
that
was
day,
the
but
whole pool boy thing? Because I remember we had a kiddie pool, right? I don't even know
you had
why
a
the
kiddie
kiddie pool was
pool.
there.
So your mom had a kiddie pool, and it was for either for the dogs or for you. I don't remember. It's just something to cool off because it's hot. And I just made
Yeah.
a joke, like I was like, "Oh, you're gonna pay me? I'll be your pool boy," because I was sick of working, doing all the stuff I was doing.
Oh gosh. But yeah, those things have
Oh,
like stuck. And gosh, that makeup, it was awful. It was like everywhere and it was like super glittery too. I'm like, they're not gonna get that out.
oh yeah, we weren't getting that out. I just like grabbed the wipe, went, "There you go, we're good. See what happens."
Wedged in the carpet. They're like, "Oh, he's a Marine." They probably gave you some grace, huh?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, that's
It's
funny.
too funny.
Uh, so there is a saying is that two Daves. So my brother's name is David, and then you're Dave, and so there's
Mhm.
the saying of two Daves don't make a right. Where has that come from?
That's me and him. We made that up because It's funny. I'll tell you the story how we first met. So we were both in MOS school. We both had the same job, military occupation specialty. And the first time I met your brother, he's in the smoke pit, and I'm like, I told you the story before, and it's like, man, I really don't like this guy. Like, he's arrogant, he's all this stuff, and then he thought the same thing about me. And then so we were like kind of like a little bit like frenemies, where it's like, I'll be social enough with you. And then we got paired up like the next day. And then we basically, if you watch Step Brothers, we step brothered. Like, we literally just like became best friends like instantly right after that. Like, at first we were like at each other, then we just loved each other. And then ever since then, it's like him and I just grew very, very close together. So I met him in May 2004 is when I officially
Wow.
met your brother. And then so we went from MOS school, and then we both went to Okinawa together, and we both went to Lejeune together. So like we were like
Wow.
inseparable. Like the stuff that we used to do all the time. I lived with him for probably almost a year when I was in Lejeune, a year and change. Him and I lived together.
Wow.
Those were fun times too. 22 years old, living together. Yeah.
Dangerous times. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was yeah. there was some crazy stuff, but it was
Yeah.
it was great. Like, there's just
Probably
great
not
memories and
appropriate
everything.
for social media.
No, yeah, thank God social media did not exist back then, because yeah, there'd be definitely some viral videos going out.
Yeah. You guys could have been viral. No.
We
You guys would
could
have
have
been in
been, but yeah,
trouble.
would have been good now when we get older. Like, ugh.
That's true. So then, and then you got out in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
So for
I
anybody
got
that
out.
is listening that doesn't know military, so it's funny because I was doing this little class thing through Mission 22, and it's like it gave all these details about like military branches, and I'm like, what? And then I had to realize like, oh, duh, like people that don't have family members in the military, like they don't know any of the jargon. So can you explain what MOS school is, just to give a brief for anyone that doesn't know?
MOS school, so it's your military occupational specialty, which is your job. So what you're doing. So I was an artillery mechanic, so was Dave. So we went to Aberdeen, Maryland, and we after boot camp and then after Marine combat training, we went to our MOS school. So with that, you learn how to work on whatever you're working on. We worked on 16,000-pound cannons and stuff. So when we were doing that, we had to learn how to break them all down, fix them, lubricate, all the stuff to maintain and keep the artillery going.
Dang.
And then,
Goodness.
so through those several months of doing that, then once we graduated there, then we went into what's called the fleet for the Marine Corps. So when you go
What is
into the
that?
fleet, that's where you get stationed at, wherever they want to send you. During MOS school, you get to pick where you think you want to go. I picked the East Coast, and I got sent to Okinawa, Japan. So I guess they meant far East Coast.
They're like, close, but no, you missed the mark.
Yeah, no, they're just like, listen, we need people in Oki. Your whole class is going, and then they lined us up, gave us a bunch of shots, and there you go.
Oh my
You know,
gosh, that's
there's
awful.
a saying we have. It's called semper gumby, which means like always flexible. Semper. The Latin word is always, like our semper fidelis is always faithful. Well, we also use semper gumby because no matter what you plan, the Marine Corps is going to change their mind and tell you you're going to do whatever they want to do, which is fine
Yeah,
because you signed the contract, so you do it.
yeah, yeah. So, what initially got you interested in the military, or was it specifically Marines?
For me, well, I have a long lineage of family that's been in the military. Actually can date my one side of my family back to the Revolution. They've
Wow.
fought in wars and everything else, and been in the military since then. And for me, like my grandfather was a Marine. Um, my other grandfather was in the Navy, so like it was pretty funny when I joined the Marine Corps. My one grandfather was in the Navy. He tried to talk some stuff and say how the Navy's a department the Marine Corps is a department of the Navy, and I said, yeah, it's the men's department. But for me, like after 9/11, yeah, you like that one. After 9/11 happened, like we're in New Jersey, we could still see what was going on, like with all the rubble. We
Mm,
donated a lot of stuff. Like I've had friends that their fathers were firefighters and passed away during that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that went on in this area specifically that we saw, and I wanted to answer that call. and I was debating what I want to do. And my brother actually joined the Marine Corps a year before me, and it was just like, you know what? Like, I want to be the best of the best. Like, I don't want to join anything else. You hear Marines, people know right away, like, oh, the Marines are coming. It's time. We're here to fuck shit up.
Yeah.
And that intrigued me.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool that you have like a lineage all the way back. You said the Revolutionary War?
Yep. I was on my
That's
mother's side. So yeah, I think she can link. My mom's doing the ancestry, so I think she can
mm,
link almost to. I want to say she linked it to the Mayflower.
that's so cool.
So it's like,
How fun.
and then my other side, just like Euro trash, like all over the place. Like you don't know what's going on.
That's the drunkard part, right?
Oh yeah, that's the Irish and the English and the Scottish and all the other stuff all over there.
Uh,
We're just all crazy.
there you go. So Okinawa, when you guys went there to Okinawa, Japan, so were you considered a combat vet? Let me ask that first.
I am not considered a combat vet. I served during a
Okay,
time of combat, but I did not see any combat.
gotcha. So well, let me ask this one is did
Mhm.
you when you left the military, even in the military, did you have PTSD that you had to navigate after you got out?
I had certain things I had to deal with. I did some mudslide recoveries in the Philippines, and I saw some things that were a bit rough. That I don't wish people would have to see, but they do see when you're recovering certain things, and when you're doing a disaster, you're going to see sights and certain stuff that is not pleasant, and you know that you're there to help, so that you just got to perform and do your job.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I don't know if you remember this, but I remember one of the times, whenever it was, um, it was when we were at the cottage, like when you came out to hang
Mhm.
out for whatever reason. Well, let me back up on that too. Why were you even coming out? Is it because you were waiting to like be deployed or something?
I was over there. I was sitting in 29 Palms. We were getting a bunch of stuff ready to go to Iraq,
Mm.
and so I was with some different units. So I was prepping a bunch of guns and everything over there. And then I know Dave. He was coming over, I guess, to home on leave. So when he was coming home on leave, I was meeting up with him as well. So that's why when we hung out, he eventually came and we all hung out
Oh,
as well.
oh, okay. Yeah, because there was one. So the memory that I'm thinking of, I was like, I swear it was both of you guys, but I'm like, I don't remember how or
Yeah,
what that looked like. Um, but I remember you guys were drinking, and then
not
I
us.
asked you guys why do you drink so much, and you said to forget. And that was like the most impactful time. And I mean, obviously, I still remember it, but I think that's when I really realized like what veterans can go through, combat or not. And I think that there's that misunderstanding that people think only traumatic things can be experienced by combat vets. And I said, I asked you after, was like, oh well, like to forget what. And then you went on the whole spiel about the mudslides in the Philippines and like was very detailed about that. And I was like, oh crap, like I didn't even realize that just a basic what in my head at the time, I mean, I think I was like 16, but like in my head at the time was like a basic deployment that I'm like, oh wow,
Mhm.
like that's something that you would have to go through and like you have to like come home to that and like have to navigate that. Um,
Yeah, and
but yeah,
yeah, especially like just see, it's just everybody deals with traumatic things differently. And I think sometimes it's just everybody processes differently. And then like with us, you know, you get no matter what, even if you show your emotions, it doesn't really matter. So it's just like you just got to keep pressing on in that situation, especially in the Marine Corps, because it's just like, listen, like I know you might be going through some shit, but like get your stuff together. We gotta keep pushing forward. Like, and
yeah,
then sometimes, like, and that's a good thing in certain times, and it's a bad thing at other times. Like, especially now when you're starting to really go into your, like, when you really start self reflecting and when you get out and trying to adjust and everything else, that's when it really hits. It's not when you're in, it's when you get out.
yeah. It's like when it all gets quiet, when you don't have to be like holding your shit together for because you're technically you're working, so it's like you do have to hold your shit together. You can't be sitting there crumbling in a tank and then being like, this sucks.
Absolutely. It's just like I call it the stage, you know, the stage is on, the lights are on, like it's time
Mhm.
to perform. Doesn't matter if you feel like it or not, like it's time to perform. You have to do certain things, especially when you have Marines' lives in your hands and certain stuff and certain missions that you need to take care of. It's go time. It's not time to be sitting around and thinking about like, oh well, this or nope. It's go time. Let's go. Let's take care of this. Let's get home.
It's like the ultimate like compartmentalizing.
Oh yeah, it's a big compartmentalizing thing. And it's good and it's bad. You know, like it's good when you can use it properly, but like if you overuse it and you don't feel certain things, sometimes those feelings come out way later in life.
Yeah, like when you stub your toe or someone gets a tomato on your sandwich that you didn't want.
Yeah, it's just like that. Just like that. Yeah. So it's just like now it's like especially lately it's been more on like I've been dealing with a lot more stuff head on and like being more open and being more vulnerable in situations because I have to be because that's without that, you know, like, are you really going deep into life or are you just staying, you know, here's me, you're staying shallow and you're not going into that surface, you know, and
Yeah,
self-reflection is the best because that's the only way we can grow.
yeah. I like that you mentioned that because it can be. I think most people are very surface level. I mean, it's very hard and it's very ugly to really get into who we actually are because sometimes we don't even want to face it ourselves, let alone tell other people how we really are or what we really think or feel or any of that. That can get very uncomfortable.
Oh yeah,
One
it's
one more question before we really dive into some deeper questions. What led
all
you
right.
to doing jujitsu?
Jiu-jitsu. Okay, well, this is actually kind of a deep question. So I was dealing with depression. I was dealing with you know, just a lot of like just hurt and anger after your brother, and you know, like I didn't have that person to call that I could just sit there and talk shit with because I used to call him and say the most grotesque, messed up stuff, and he would laugh and say the same exact stuff back to me, and we just start laughing. Like if somebody listened to our conversations, they would think we hated each other, but we loved each other. So after that, I kind of hit a spot where I was in a rut, and then you know I walked in to jujitsu the one day, and I started talking to some people, and of course the one guy was a Marine Corps combat veteran, the other guy was a Marine Corps veteran. There was a bunch of people from the military, police, firemen, you name it, people from all different walks of life, different political views, different all kinds of stuff, and we all just could get together and just choke each other out and have fun, and then sit there and just talk and like it's like seriously the best thing. Like ever since I walked in there, I don't want to leave. Like it's great. Like I love it. It's such a great outlet. It's teaches people so much discipline. It also humbles you very much. You realize like if you think you're super tough or you're this person, you get people that will just humble you and show you like, listen, you're not as badass as you think you are. And that's just life though. It's a challenge. It's for me, it's jujitsu is like similar to golf and life and a lot of other things that we do that anything we do that's hard, it makes the juice that much worth the squeeze. You know, if it just comes easy, there's no like you don't feel that accomplishment, but something that's like hard and you're constantly grinding and there's no end to, but you still continue to do it, like that's really a true pursuit.
And then you end up having that huge breakthrough, right? I'm
Yeah.
guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. After that, you know, I started losing weight, feeling better, working on myself a little bit, you know, and just working on my self discovery, being more open about things, trying to be more vulnerable in situations, and also just be wiser the way I speak. You know, it's like this life's just so short, and sometimes we take things for granted, and it's crazy. And there's so much philosophy, even on the mats too. Like some of these people are just they're they're so intelligent, so cool, and it's funny because we get people from like other schools that come in, and we'll like roll with them, and like you know we'll spend 5-10 minutes trying to choke each other, you know, manipulate each other's limbs, and do all kinds of other stuff, and then right after that we're like, hey man, what's going on? We're all like just being super nice, and it's just it's just it's its own thing. It's so cool. Like for me,
Yeah.
I love it. I wrestled in high school. Like it's something that is a great outlet. There's a big like unity, like a good community that comes with it too.
Yeah. Sounds nice, especially after being like a vet, because you have like so much camaraderie and you have that where you're, I mean, Marines, like for sure, like you guys like fight each other if it's physical or verbal. And so,
All
being
the
able to
time.
do that on the mat, you kind of get that outlet and that camaraderie.
Oh, absolutely. And then the good thing too is like, I see a lot of cops that come and train and everything else. And that makes you feel good about your community because you know that the cops are caring enough to work there and just work on bettering themselves. And if they can use a nonviolent way to control a situation, like
Oh
that's
my
way
God.
better. I saw I saw the limbs going like this, started laughing.
Oh my gosh. Um, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you found jujitsu, especially in such a
Uh,
dark time, like what a incredible outlet. I know when I started working out, like, I mean, we were in an apartment and they had like a gym. It was like right down the stairs from our apartment. So it was nice. Like I avoid gyms just because I'm like, I don't want to be around like that many people while I'm working out. Like it's just weird for me. But
mhm.
like no one would go there. But that was such an outlet, especially with grief. It was just like, oh, let me push, these weights as hard as I can until like I literally can't. Like, and then you could feel it, and then it's just like that progression. Like there's so many layers to just working out, not just releasing that steam, but also then you feel good, the endorphins and all that and stuff. So I
Oh, yeah, you get
totally
that.
get that.
Yeah, you get that dopamine hit right after all
Yeah.
that working out. You get that accomplishment. And then, like with me, when I was telling you, I started hiking now and running and everything else. Like, there's times where I'll just be hiking with my pack on, and I might just be talking to Dave while I'm walking a little bit, and then I'll go into
Mhm.
my mode where I'll just sit still and just enjoy nature a little bit. And then when I'm feeling like I really need to push myself, I'll start pushing myself with like maybe picking up the pace a little bit. And then of course, I kind of goggins myself. Sometimes I talk a little shit to myself and get myself moving because that's how I motivate myself, just because that's just the way it is. So
Yeah.
it's just a good peaceful thing. You're not worried about anything else. You're not thinking too much because that's the problem. I think with just everybody as a whole, we all overthink and we all have this baggage. And like this is the biggest weapon right here. You can use it for you or you can use it against you. And your brain is just it's crazy what your brain can control.
Can you describe the impact it had when you learned about David's suicide? So, well, let me first say this is anybody that's new listening, my brother died by suicide back in August 2020, and this is his fellow Marine bestie brother from another mother. So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
how has that
So
impacted him?
that impact, it's funny how like we talk about impact of suicide. So at first, it was the overwhelming rush of just like, finding out that information, not knowing how to accept it, hoping it's just not real, hoping this is a bad dream, hoping that this isn't everything's gonna work out and everything else. And then you go through your phases, like you hit your high highs and your low lows. Like you think you accepted it, but you really haven't. Um, I was dealing with a lot of anger. Um, Anger was the number one thing I had when I heard, well, besides sadness. It was sadness for a while, then it was anger. And the anger really was just disguised as sadness. But
Mhm.
I want to say, even for like most men, um, anger is easy to display. Your testosterone's pumping. You can still control it. You can break something. You feel better. It's an instant gratification. Where when you start digging deep and you realize it's not really anger and it's more sadness and hurt and grief. That's when you really start healing. Um, I'm still on that process. I don't think I'm ever gonna fully just be like, oh yeah, I'm great. It's always something that's in my mind. It's always something that I deal with. I miss him every day. I want to call him. I want to tell him to go fuck himself. I want to just joke around with him. Um, and it's just he was a brother to me. Him and I, we bailed each other out of bad situations. We've had great times together. Like I I couldn't imagine a better person that I'd put my life in their hands with. Like that's who he was for me. And I know he felt the same way about me too, because of just all the stuff we've been through. Um, it was, yeah, there's still some days where I'm like, like it hits me, but I also know that I have to keep going forward and live my life. It's not that I'm forgetting him. I always remember him, but I have to still live my life. I can't harp on it all the time because if I just live a life of sadness, I'm not living my life. So I have to live my life, but honor him in a way that's true to him.
Yeah. A dear friend to me reminded me very recently that because I was just annoyed. I'm like, oh, like I know I have PTSD slightly from his death. Like, I have like
Yeah.
paranoid of like, oh gosh, if I go do this, then what if, like all of that. Right. And so, I was just venting to her. I'm like, I'm so annoyed with it. Like, it's just so like, I feel like I'm just like held back in a sense on things with it.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, well, pretty much like the grief." I mean, it was encouraging, but it also like, it sucks. Like it's going to be with us until we die. Like we get to carry it with us. And I'm like, "Yeah." But I'm like, like sometimes it's such a good thing to honor him, but then it's also like, when you're just exhausted and you're just kind of you don't have as much resilience. It's just like, ugh, this is annoying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there was a recent time where I went to the bar just by myself, and I had a beer and I said our toast. And after I said that, I said, "Listen, I'm not forgetting you. You're always going to be with me, but like right now, I just need to like not be so overconsumed about what's going on." And that was very hard too, because it's like you're kind of like at that fork in the road. It's like, listen, I'm still here for you, but also it's just like I'm still remembering you, but I need to also focus on me a little bit to get my life in track as well. And that's a very hard thing too, because it's like now I'm like I always like would contradict myself. I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Like I or like when sometimes it's weird, like if you're like over happy or like, why am I so happy? Like I should be like sad about this, but then there's times where something will happen and like I swear, like I hear his voice or I hear somebody say something, and it just reminds me of him, and I just start laughing. I'm like, I look up and I'm just like, hey, dumbass, I miss you, like stuff like that,
Yeah. It's like we can get that guiltiness of, oh, I shouldn't be happy because like it sucks they're not here. And
Yeah,
then I mean, some people try to be helpful, which is not really helpful when they're like, they would want you to be happy. It's like, no, but it sucks that they're not here. Like, yeah, if you were to
exactly,
like
yeah.
talk to them and like, yeah, they'd be like, suck it up, like shut up, I'm fine, kind of thing, or
Oh,
stop being a bitch,
that's exactly what he would say too.
One thing that got me through, like, when I first was in the beginning of grief, it was like, we just moved out here and I was like gonna do the cold dips, like ice plunges, but it was in the pool, but it was like winter time. It was December. And there was one time I was like standing, like staring at the pool, and I'm like, it was 5:30 in the morning, and I'm like, I don't want to go out there. Like it's freezing. And then in my head, I'm like, he would probably be like, stop being a little bitch. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll go. Dang it.
That's exactly what he would say.
Yeah.
Oh,
But it doesn't, I mean, at the same time, it's like, I mean, I've heard it in therapy so many times, like it's not black or white. Like there is that in between, and you can feel both at the same time, where you can be grateful for being alive and what you have right now, but you could also be, kind of compartmentalizing, like, but at the same exact time, if we tap into that grief, it's devastating. There's sorrow and there's sadness and there's all of that. It's like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can have it simultaneously.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's the where you just keep pushing forward, but like I feel like he's like looking down on us and everything else, and it's just like, yo, dude, you're just missed. That's what it really comes down to, and
Yeah.
that's where it all comes in. That's where all that confliction thing. I feel like sometimes with the pain, it's like it shows you that like people gave a fuck about him, like, I don't think sometimes, like, he got, I guess, so far in his own mind about what he thought, and there was no, you couldn't change his mind once he made up his mind on certain things.
Yeah.
But it's it's because we cared so much, and like it meant something to all of us, and it still does. So that's where it's still like sometimes the pain still reminds me of, like, it was real. Like, I really gave a shit, and like I'm just grateful, even though it wasn't as much time as I want him to have on this earth. I'm grateful that he had that time, at least with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. That's nice that you can see that and have that gratitude. When you think about a time you served with him, oh, I'm gonna get upset. I knew this was gonna happen with you.
It's all good. I think it's gonna happen
Ah,
anyway.
I
It up.
know. Maybe I should put my
It's
notebook in front of me.
I
When
gotta keep it raw.
I know, I was very happy, and then I was also very sad to do this with you.
Yeah, I know. Same. I feel the same exact way. It's hard sometimes because I know seeing me reminds you of him, and vice versa for me. So it's just like sometimes, like, I know, like, it's hard sometimes to communicate all the time with each other just because of everything, and but I am grateful that he's left an impact on all of us, so that much.
Yeah, and I think even the times we talk, it's like I think it goes for both of us. Like we don't know kind of what to say because it sucks.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like,
100%. Yeah. So it's just, like, I've told you this, like, I started therapy as well.
yeah,
And, just trying to deal with, like, just me expressing things better, just because of sometimes the impact. I didn't realize that I thought I just got over the initial part, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. But I was burying a lot of the emotions and dealing, instead of just like facing the problem dead on, I was kind of just like, putting it away. And, like, it's made me face a lot of stuff that I realized I was holding on to, a lot of burdens and guilt. And I feel like no matter what, we're always going to feel a little bit of a guilt, even though there's nothing, it wasn't within power, but still, you're still going to hold that guilt because you give a shit.
yeah. There was this thing that I learned recently, especially like it applies so much to grief. Is like we can forgive or we can accept different things. I mean, this can happen with anything, but it's really powerful in grief is that we are going to have to not have to, but we are going to revisit that and we're going to have to re-accept it and we're going to have to re-forgive like the same things over and over. And I was like, oh man, I know I've done that multiple times because I'm like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good. And then like something else, like on a deeper level of that same like experience or scenario or whatever, then I'm like, oh crap, it feels like it sucks again. And then it's like it reopens that to end up processing. But
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's crazy to have to revisit, not have to, but it's crazy that we will end up revisiting the same things over and over. I'm
And
going
yeah,
to try to,
it's never gonna end. But we're always gonna revisit that, and you're always gonna hit it here and there. But knowing what's triggering you, and knowing that, like, hey, listen, like, you're, as I like to say, it's like I'm feeling this pain because I cared so much,
yeah,
and looking at it now too, it's just like I rather feel this pain because I cared this much than never cared at all.
yeah.
So, like,
It wouldn't have hurt. It won't hurt as much if you don't care that much about the
yeah, but like,
person.
are you really living life if you don't care and show any emotion?
Yeah. Then we'd be like, what,
We're humans
sociopaths?
for we're humans for a reason, like you
Yeah.
have to feel the feels, like, what's the point of living if if you're just gonna go through it just completely blank slated and everything else? Like, if you're not gonna live beyond the norm and everything else, if you're just looking for an average this, and that's where now is why I'm hiking, I'm doing jujitsu, I'm trying to stay in shape, I'm trying to get back to my community, I'm doing as much as I can. And if I can just impact one person, then that's all I need to do.
It's all
And I
worth
know I've
it.
impacted more than one person, but if you can just get one, that trickle effect, the butterfly effect, or whatever you want to call it, like a tree, start at the
Mm,
top and it goes right down. They affect a bunch of other people. And guess what? Now you change the world for the better place.
yeah. And it's such a blessing, like when you, I guess, get like confirmation. Like, say you said something and then someone comes back to you and is like, oh, wow, you said this and it really impacted me. Like, it's so beautiful when you get those confirmations. But 99% of the time, like, we will never get those confirmations of the impact that we have. And it could be someone you walk by in a grocery store and say something nice to, or had a casual
Absolutely.
conversation with quickly. And it's like, you never know how that could have impacted somebody. So I agree. But I'm gonna get this question out so we can keep diving.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Ah, eye roll. When you think about a time when you served with David, what specific moments or experiences come to mind to showcase your guys' bond as Marines?
Some of these stories I cannot tell, but a specific moment, I would probably have to say, us just going through Okinawa together, we're both 19 years old, overseas. We spent the Christmas together, like all our whole unit, going through all the stuff, all the losses, the highs, the lows. I mean, like overall, I don't know if there's a specific moment because there were so many moments, so many goods. Like there were some bads, like where we've like, one of us had like, a girlfriend like cheat on us or something else or something crazy. But like there were so many moments of just him and I like hanging out, just doing whatever. Like we had a lot of good times. And it's funny because it was good times under like, sometimes like bad situations. Like we'd be getting punished because, all of us like for our unit, like they didn't clean the room right or something. So like him and I, we'd be buffing a floor and just like we'd be buffing floors for hours and just joking around while we were doing it. Stuff like that. Like
Did you guys
there
like,
is
were you
one.
guys living in the same room, like in the same barracks?
We lived in the same building, so we're on the same floor because we're in the same unit. He lived like 2 or 3 doors down, and then when I was there for about a year, and then I went into the Mew. When I was on the Mew, I went to another barracks on the other side of base because I was in
Mm.
a different unit for a while, and then so like I'd still see him, and we'd meet up, and I'd go over to the shop and stop by and everything else, and then when I would like deploy out and he'd be in. Once I got back, I'd go see him, and we'd be talking and everything else. But for the main gist of it, yeah, we were pretty inseparable, especially when we were in the same units together, just because we would always be around. Um, yeah, so for about a year and a half in Okinawa, we were like in the same building, and then when I went to Lejeune, he was actually the first. Stayed in his room the first night I came in Lejeune because I didn't have a barracks room yet. I came in like super late, and so like I slept on his probably his futon or floor or something because it was like a small little barracks room. And then I got my room and everything else. And so we were all there. And then when I went to 29 Palms, that's when I met you and everything else. And then when I came back, that's when him and I lived together for a while.
Oh, wow. In North
Because he was
Carolina,
he
right?
was yeah, in North Carolina. So he was married then. So like, and he's like, I got an extra room. I was like, all right, I'll pay your rent, bro. I don't want to live in the barracks anymore. He's like, all right, dude. So I had my own little room, my own little bathroom. I was so broke too. So I think I had a futon like mattress. I didn't even have the futon because the frame broke. So literally the futon mattress was on the floor. Like I
Oh
think
my
I paid him, I think it was like $300 a month or something. I didn't have like any money. I was like, here you go, dude. This is all. He's like, oh, of course he didn't want to take any money. And I kept like, dude, take some money. Like, here you go. Here's some, for,
Oh my.
utilities and stuff. So I was sleeping on the floor there, but like then I eventually got a couch in my room. Like I had a little couch and a futon. It
That's
was
an
like a
upgrade.
crappy, yeah, it was like a crappy college dorm, kind of like my room was kind of stuff like that. But it was everything I needed. I had a bed. I put a little mini fridge in there. I had my beers and everything else. Like we were living life.
You're set.
Yeah, I was set. I was 22 at the time. Yeah,
And
I
you
didn't
weren't
need
out, were
much.
you out of the military yet?
No, I wasn't out yet. I had to
Mm.
stay in a little bit longer because I got reconstructive surgery on my ankle.
From what? What did you guys do?
So we actually didn't do anything. I think this was in it's in Korea. I think it was. I twerked my ankle and I snapped part of the bone, and like
Ah,
it was all messed up. So what they had to do is they had to actually pull out the bone spurs out of they cut into my ankle, pulled the bone spurs out where they were going into my feet and everything else, because when I was running I was hurting a lot, and then they recut my tendons and fused them back together.
oh gosh, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it was.
Awful.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it at all. It was a little bit rough.
uh, sounds horrible.
Yeah. So, but
Um,
like, I mean, there's several nights. Like, we used to go to this bar called Fast Freddy's a lot. That's a key moment. Fast Freddy's
yeah.
Mondays used to be buy 10 wings, get 10 free. And it was like dollar draft, or it might have been 50-cent draft. I can't remember, like Bud Lights. So me and him would get one of the like new kids that just got their driver's license to drop us off. So we would just get demolished. And then we'd call the guy up and tell him to pick us up.
Oh my gosh. And
So
probably during that time, that was an ancient time. It was probably 50 cents a draft.
it probably was, yeah. Because there was this other place we used to go to called Gus's Warehouse, and it was bring your own mug, and it was like, I think it was like 15-cent beers or something. It was
Dang.
crazy.
So did you
And it
guys
was like
bring
always
your own mug?
yeah, and it'd be just garbage beer. It'd be whatever like left of the taps they had, and they would just empty the taps out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's always like nasty. You never knew what you were getting. You were gonna get like High Life or Paps or
Oh,
Keystone
so it's just
Light.
whatever. It wasn't like you could
Oh
really
yeah,
pick.
it was
Oh,
just rando. You were not picking like, hey, can I have this? No, they're just like, here it is. Here's
they're
your
like,
beer.
this is the leftover from last weekend.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Ah,
Oh.
oh my goodness. And then, well, a random question I didn't have down was, didn't you lose or did you lose anybody's while you were in the military?
So Corporal Mills, he was actually my corporal
Oh,
when we were in Okie. He transferred to, I believe, Pendleton after that, and he went to Iraq, and unfortunately, a roadside bomb
oh
took
dang.
part of him and his platoon out. And when we heard that news, it was just like it hit us. And we also had another one right as I got out was Hartzell, and unfortunately, he got murdered on base.
Oh geez.
Yeah, that was a rough time. Dave was still in. He called me up and told me, and I was not happy. Um, I reached out to as many of my guys that I knew that were still in while I was in, and I let them know if they needed anything, I'll come out there and everything else. But it was it was a fucked up situation.
Yeah. And he was the second guy was one that you had in your same platoon? Because the other one was your
Yeah,
corporal. So that was the other guy that was served with you.
yeah, he was in my platoon as well, but not at the time of when he passed. The other
Yeah.
guy, Hartzell, yeah, he was in my platoon in my company, and like I got out, so I EAS, which means end of active service. I went home to New Jersey, and then a couple months later, I got that news because
Ugh,
Dave called me and told me that, and I was just like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!"
that's so crazy. That's awful.
Yeah. So there was tons of people with guilt with that, and you know, unfortunately, especially being in, there's you do you do lose people, and it's I don't like to say it's part of it, but it is part of it. Like, and realizing that like you definitely see your mortality at a super young age. 18 years old, and I'm signing, my beneficiary in case I die, and you sign your will, your where your belongings are going to go to. Um, it's a serious thing, like and we all know it, but still, like that's sometimes why we do things to the extreme. Sometimes, like we would party hard because we'd work hard. Sometimes, like we just felt like it's just like you know, we don't know if we're getting deployed tomorrow, so let's have some fun tonight. So,
Yeah.
so
More
you'll
like
have
that.
some really great times, but yeah, it's like just like life. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah. It's like a you only live once kind of thing. Might as well go all in because I mean you guys do sign that paper that it's like, well, I'm gonna give you everything, even including my life. So it's like you guys kind
Oh
of
yeah, absolutely. You know, it's that
go
blank
hard.
check that you sign. Yep, and once you sign that, you know, it's just like we used to always say, you know, USMC, you sign the motherfucking contract. So it's just like, you know, nobody put a gun in your head and made you do it. So guess what? You're here. Let's deal with what we gotta go.
Yeah, that's so funny. You guys' acronyms. I still
But
troll
yeah,
people. I still troll people about army, and
uh,
they're always like, "Are you military?" I'm like, "No, but my brother's a Marine, and he taught me that." Like, not ready to be Marine yet. And they're like, "Oh," they
yeah.
get all. What's funny is my brother-in-law is
Oh,
actually Army, or was Army, so I've made fun of him before.
oh yeah. We all make fun of each other, you know. Like I got one guy in jujitsu. He likes to hand me crayons all the time, and I said thanks. I was hungry anyway. You know, like
Little snack
he's
bits.
he's yeah, you know, like hey, we're not the smartest, but we sure can blow shit up. All right.
That's true. You guys are the most badass. You guys are the ones that they're like, "Oh no, we're having trouble. Send the Marines."
That's what we're there for. You know, we're a little
Yeah,
pit bull. You know, you keep us in a cage, prod us, and then you let us free, and that's when we get to have our fun. We do what
yeah.
we do best. You know.
So with losing, like I know, like you and my brother were very, very close. So between losing him and then losing your other buddies that were in the military, they're all different deaths too. Um, so I usually say like, oh, each death comes with different type of baggage. Like, would you agree with that, especially like as a veteran losing buddies and all that?
Oh yeah. I feel like each case is even individual too. Even with just suicide cases, you know, or murder or anything, like it's all individual and it's all how you process and like what really happened and everything else. None of it's easy. That's the easiest way to explain it all. No matter what, like it's not an easy thing to lose somebody you care about. It all sucks. It all sucks just in different ways, you know, and it just processing it all and just realizing that, like, hey, you know, like this is the grief that I'm gonna have to go through, or I'm gonna have to, you know, process this in a way where it's constructive, especially, you know, instead of like going into those habits that especially a lot of military people like to do, myself included. I was in that case where you start drinking a little bit too much, or you get into certain things that you shouldn't be getting into just to feel numb, so you stop feeling the pain. But after a while, you have to face the music. Like you have to
Yeah,
face the pain, and you have to go through it instead of just trying to mask it. Because when you start masking it and suppressing it, that's when it comes out even more. Maybe not right away, but down the line.
yeah, yeah. Because even like you mentioned, like the anger, like that's just really just sadness coming out in a different way, and like kind of, I mean,
Yeah,
we even chatted about it outside of this. Is like society kind of deems men to be more angry and to show their sadness through that way than just to like actually be sad and like be vulnerable. It's like we're not.
yeah, absolutely. It's easier and more acceptable for a man to show
Yeah,
anger than it is for
yeah,
him to show sadness or vulnerability. When you show vulnerability or sadness, sometimes it's put back on men as a whole. I'm not saying all men, and I'm not saying everybody does that, but I'm saying as a whole, as society, um, anger is more acceptable for a man, and we use anger sometimes. We control it, but like we use it as a way to sometimes express certain things. And for us too, like with anger, like I like anger sometimes. You know, you get, as I said, you get that testosterone pumping. You're all fueled up. You know, you let that anger out, and then like you feel good for that moment, but you're still, it's not really anger, it's sadness. So you're not really dealing with the problem. You just gave yourself a temporary solution. So you kind of just like, took like a hit, or you took a, like a drink of vodka or something. It's basically the same thing. You're just doing that mentally. So
Um,
the anger, you get that rush, and it just feels good in the moment, and then after that, as I said, it's just like taking a hit or a shot of vodka or something else. It's just a temporary solution. And then you really realize that anger is not anger. It's sadness. It's confusion. It's all this other stuff disguised as anger. Anger is like on top of a glacier, and the bottom is actually really what the problem is. Because there's so much more to a glacier than what we see. That's
yeah,
anger, really, especially for men. Especially for men.
yeah. It's like anger could fuel a little bit, but it's like if you're not actually getting down to the root problem, it's just going to keep firing off
Mhm.
and causing
And
problems.
then yeah. And if you can use anger as a great tool too, though. You can use that to motivate you to get up off the couch and run, or do jujitsu or golf or whatever you're into. You can use that anger for good and just know how to channel it. And then realizing it's like, oh, wow, okay, now I do feel a lot better. I got all that out of my system now. Now I feel a lot more clear minded. I feel like, especially even after just like a walk, if I'm having a real rough day or something, I just go for like a mile walk. I come back,
Yeah,
you're a little bit more at peace, and you're realizing like I just need to get it out of my system.
yeah. So this is a question I've toggled with for a long time, and I'm asking it for me selfishly, not for anybody else.
All right.
But how does the bond between like Marines? So we know like the military is like a brotherhood, and
Mhm.
but how does the bond with like a fellow Marine differ from like any other civilian friendship?
Um, well, with the Marine Corps especially, um, you go through boot camp, which is the hardest boot camp besides like special forces and everything else. But like it's the hardest boot camp out of all the branches. So you instantly know that whoever is there with you went through all that. Then they went through, Marine combat training. Then they went through all these situations where you can get killed, you can get shot, you can get stabbed, you could go through any of this, and these are the people that you're relying on. Then you realize, like, they're going through a lot of similar situations that you're going through too, especially when you're deployed or like when you're out there, and it's kind of like trauma bonding. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like like my buddy, he lost his father right around the same time Dave left us and everything else. And him and we bonded really hard because his situation was really crazy as well. So it was just like you just get very close very fast. Like I can't. It's hard to explain the brotherhood that happens, but it just happens because of the situations that you get put through. Like you suffer. It's trauma bond is the best way to explain it because it's like
Yeah.
you suffer, but you also like enjoy part of it because it's something so pure. Like because you're like suffering together. It's like it's so weird, but it's just like I remember just even like being in like Oki or like when we were doing something, it would be like something that we really didn't want to do, or something like where it's like we're just getting slaughtered and we're just doing PT, or like we're lifting railroad ties. Him and I would just like look at each other sometimes, like after we put the railroad tie, and I would just like give him like a quick smirk, or he'd make like some stupid face at me, and it's like they're like, "You're not gonna break us," because like that was just the mindset we had, and
Yeah.
especially with like the Marine Corps, like they convince you so much, which is great because you have to be that cocky, just like Mike Tyson. I don't know if you ever heard Mike Tyson talk before he went into the ring.
Mm-mm.
So Mike Tyson has this saying where before he went in the ring, he was scared. He's been dreaming of this guy beating him and everything else, and like the whole time, like while he's walking up, he's getting a little bit more confident, a little bit more confident, a little bit more confident. Now this guy's beatable, and he goes, "I step in the ring, and I'm a fucking god. This guy will never beat me," and everything else. You have to be convinced that way, especially when you're going to get put in a situation where you could be outnumbered or outmanned or outgunned or anything
Mm.
else. And then especially with me, like, me, I'm like a leprechaun, I'm 5'5". So like I
You're like high five.
yeah, I'm only 5'5". So
So really quick, I gave you credit the other day. I was telling Sean, I was like, "Oh yeah," I told him like my intro, like the end of it, and I was like, "Oh yeah," and he's like, "You're really gonna say that?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, he's short. Like this has just been like a troll that we've always done." And he's all, and I was like, "Well, I think he's like 5'8."
no, 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 no. I'm 5'5". Yeah, yeah. So like, I was like always like the shortest guy, but like, David, he's like, you Five Corn Lakehorn. He's like, you're a fucking chicken hawk, dude. You're just crazy. Like, you don't care. I'm like, yeah, I have to be, And like,
Yeah,
that's even with me, even on the mats, everything else. Like, I always forget how short I am, and when I'm seeing these guys I'm rolling with, they're like 6 foot or whatever. It's the funniest stuff. I'm crawling on them like a spider monkey, like grabbing on their backs and stuff. But like you have to be convinced to the point that you're not going to fail, and you're so
yeah,
good at what you do, and you know your stuff. And when you walk with that confidence, it's like it's never like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do it. It's like, no, I'm going to find a way. And
yeah,
that's the mindset we have especially the Marine Corps and just with life. That's the mindset I always have. It's like I might not know the answer or I might not be able to get it done right now, but I'm going to find a way and I'm not going to fail. I don't lose. I will just keep going until I win. A loss isn't a loss. It's a lesson for me. Like every time
yeah,
I lose in anything, that's a valuable lesson. So like when you hit those points where like you think you're losing, you're really not losing. You're learning a lesson, and you're going to learn way more lessons off of failures than you're going to success. Success is like, oh, that comes easy. It just came to me. Okay, success, but came from
yeah,
actually all those losses. You always have more losses than wins, but everybody always just wants to celebrate the wins and they don't want the process. And taking the L's,
yeah,
you have to take the L's and just keep pushing forward and just nope, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep driving forward.
yeah. Yeah, I love the process of things. And I see that with a lot of people is like if it was easy, then like everybody would be doing all sorts of things. But it's like they hit one roadblock or one loss or one failure and they're like, "Oh, see, I wasn't able to do it." And it's like, gosh, I mean we could even look at like businesses, like successful businesses, they probably failed dozens and dozens of times. Like it wasn't just they just boomed and now they're this, very successful company. It's like all of them go through crap. Even in grief, like people that are doing okay. I mean, like are both of us, it's like we didn't just have our loss and be like, "Oh, we're fine and we're just great." It's like, no, it's been messy, it's been ugly, it's been uncomfortable, it's been shitty. Like there has just been such depth to it that like now we could sit on like the sidelines and be like, "Ah, today we are okay." My little
Yeah,
saying
and
here. But
see, perfect example just even of us is like we're still taking some L's here and there. There's still
yeah,
no matter how much like people like, oh well, you're good. Like, yeah, I'm good, but there's still gonna be a loss here and there that comes up, and that's fine.
yeah,
Like knowing that that's gonna happen, and knowing you're like, all right, I'm gonna still push through this loss, and no matter what, I'm still gonna come on top. Like I'm gonna use this as a lesson. So every time like I have like a setback, or if I have certain things that are going on, it's just like, all right, like no problem. That yeah, let me try to learn from the situation. It's when we don't learn from them situations that's when it starts becoming an issue. Like when you just let that behavior control you, or you're like you get on the pity party, which is always easy. Like I've done this and been guilty of
yeah.
this where oh poor me,
Me
and
too.
it's just like well, yeah, and it's just like, like suck it. Like this is how I have to talk to myself because I talk to myself very bluntly. It's like suck it the fuck up. All right, you gotta get fucking hard. You like it's done. Like you gotta push through this, learn from this lesson, and keep driving forward.
Yeah. It's like how David Goggins, like you mentioned, will talk, huh?
Oh yeah,
I
I
mean,
have to talk to myself sometimes because if I
yeah,
don't, then it's like that's just that mindset though. The
yeah.
Marine Corps probably didn't help that much, and my dad didn't help that much either.
See, I'm very, I mean, I was in the military, but I'm similar where it's like I don't get motivated if someone was like, "You're doing a great job. Oh, go you." Like you need to be like, "Oh, keep pushing, suck it up, like go. You can do this." Like I really need that like
Yep,
more stern,
it's
you know,
it's go time. Like
direction.
let's do this. Like yeah.
Yeah. I think it more like fuels you too. Like it kind of pumps you up with that fuel
Oh,
in a sense.
absolutely. I love when people say I can't do something. Like that fuels the shit out of me. Like tell me I can't do it. Tell me it can't be done. I'm gonna show you so wrong. I'm gonna prove you wrong. It was the same thing. Like when I joined the Marine Corps, I was a senior in high school, and everybody's like talking about the colleges that they're going to. And I was in this class and they're like, well, Dave Mench, what are you doing in your life? And I said I was joining the Marine Corps, and everybody's like, they were like all scared because, you know, the war was breaking out and everything else. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And like, I had a couple of people like laugh, like I was joking. And I'm like, you'll fucking see. So like, that just motivated me even more. I'm like, oh yeah.
That just can feel so many people, like when someone tells you that you can't do it, or even like you even said, what's that saying? It's like, oh, I'll either find a way or I'll make one. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're not. It's like that determination.
Oh
I like,
yeah. And it
I'm like that too.
just,
I'm like, oh, I'm gonna figure this out, and then it's like if I get roadblocks, and I'm like, okay, well, how? Like, more asking the questions how, not like, oh, this is here. Oh no, that stops me. It's like, okay, well, how could I go around that, or how could I go through it instead? I mean, I even did that with grief. Like, I thought I was gonna like beat grief. I'm like, I'm gonna do all this stuff just to not feel so shitty, and then like
yeah.
the raw reality was like, oh, you can go to therapy and you could join these groups and you could work out and you could do all these great things, but it's still gonna suck. And I was like, oh, okay. I still
Yeah.
feel like
And
that.
yeah, and for some reason I'm addicted to things that like you could just still just like no matter how much work you put into it, like you're still like there's still more to do.
Yeah,
Like for me, like like golf, no matter how much golf you play, it's just like you still are not that good and you still need to do more. Jujitsu, like no matter how good you think you are, there's always people that are so much better and so much more leveled up than you. And I think that's the beauty of it is like it's the art of searching for perfection, but you know you're never going to get it.
yeah,
I feel like that's grief too. Like, you're looking to, we think we're like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff and everything's going to just work out a-okay. It's not. And that's fine. That's perfect. Like, once you realize that, it gets a lot easier to start working on yourself and working on your grief too.
yeah. It's like a lot of humility. And then I think even doing stuff or navigating it or getting experiences, it's like I end up realizing that it just came with a lot of wisdom. So like even as I go through each year or each new experience or toggling different I don't even know, like just different portions of my grief and reprocessing or reviewing it, it's like I end up getting more wisdom, even though it's like, oh, I already visited this and I already processed it, but then it's like it goes on a different level. I end up getting like more wisdom from that. And I think even like with the jujitsu, it's like, yeah, someone's gonna end up beating you. Like you have to have humility that you're not the coolest. Like you can do really well, but you're not the coolest in,
Oh yeah,
in the
you're
land. And
but as I always say, I want to be, so I'm just gonna keep striving to be.
yeah,
Like that's just how like my mindset works. Like no matter what, and I think that's it's so perfect because it's like the mat reflects life, and vice versa. And like my professor, he's got a great saying. Like he uses Kaizen a lot. 1% better every day. So you don't have to
mhm,
be this super big thing right away. It's baby steps. It's just like running a marathon. If you try to full out sprint the first mile, you're going to pass out. You got to
yeah,
slowly work yourself into it. And life's a marathon. It ain't a sprint. So,
yeah,
we got all this time. We need to try to enjoy it and use it as much as we can, but also realize like you got to slowly, gradually work your way into situations. It doesn't happen overnight, and we get addicted to like the overnight sensation. Like we have this instant gratification, especially with
mhm,
like social media, um, just life in general, like just how everything's so instant, text message and all this. It's so instant. We're so used to getting that instant gratification. We're looking for that for grief, but we're not. It
yeah,
doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. So then when it doesn't work that way, we get like, we're like, well, am I really processing right? Or we start like overthinking way more of the situation. We're like, hey, it actually takes a long time. And even when you're starting to feel good, you're going to have a few setbacks. You're going to have a few things, and that's fine. Like knowing that when you get triggered or you feel a certain way, like realizing like, hey, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to
yeah,
get through these emotions. Don't let these emotions fully control you, but it's okay that you're feeling a little bit sad, or you're feeling a
yeah,
little like you miss somebody, or you feel a certain way like that. So I, for me, like that's where I just keep pushing forward.
yeah. That's awesome. I've heard that a lot with grief is like just do 1% better than you did yesterday. And that's going to look different at each day because you might show up at 20% that day. So it's like, even if you're doing 1% better of your 20%, like you're succeeding at that point. Like we're not 100% every single day. And yeah, like our grief is just going to be there until we pass on. And then we will stop grieving, but it's never going to stop, and we're never going to not visit our suckiness of losing the person that we cared about.
Oh yeah, and it's funny too because there's days where you'll be like 5% better, and then there's days you're going
Mm,
negative too. Like it's just it's the way it goes. It's like, oh, I
yeah.
thought I was doing good, but then this happened.
Yeah, it's going to balance out. So my last question, even though we're going to do a second one, is
Mhm.
what would be one thing you would suggest to listeners or vets or any of it on how to journey on?
There's people out there that care about you very much. Even when you feel like you're at your darkest moments, there's tons of people and resources out there for you. Your life is way more valuable than you realize. And don't let your mind or some bad thoughts ruin what's going on in your life because there's so much. I live by this saying where I saw it not too long ago. And this guy said, if I gave you $1 million today, how would it make you feel? And of course, everybody said, oh, it'd make me feel great. And then so they said, well, if I gave you $10 million, how would it make you feel? And they'd be like, oh, that I would be ecstatic. He goes, but if I gave you $10 million and I told you you couldn't wake up tomorrow, would you take the 10 million? And then the person's like, no, I wouldn't take the 10 million. It's like, well, then why aren't you waking up every day realizing that your life is worth more than $10 million? And I was like, holy shit, that hit me like right in the feels. I'm like, you know what? That's right. Like, I need it. Gratitude is like so underrated. Like, we don't realize just taking just a moment of gratitude just to appreciate the things we have in this life. And I mean, I could go on for days about this. Like, it's such a beautiful life. Like, it's such a beautiful world out there, and like, you can't worry about what's going on political wise or all this other stuff. You just need to find the right people, find the right thing that works for you, the right outlets, whether it's running, whether it's hiking, whether it's going out in the wilderness or doing whatever you want to do. Like, it's once you find a great outlet and you find people that enjoy the same stuff that you do, it makes life a lot better and a lot more enjoyable and everything else. And you need to find your proper friends and people that support you. Especially in the veteran community, we it's a bad it's a bad statistic, a 22 a day, and like it's
Yeah.
something that really needs to we got to try to do our best to fix it. And people do care about you. They don't realize. I think people get stuck in such a way where they just think they're better off that way. When I personally don't think they are, but like I can understand why they got to that point. But it's unfortunate that they felt that that was the only option. But you can't change somebody's mind. But it's just, yeah, like people are like they're so worth so much more. Like and especially getting out fresh too. Like, a lot of these guys that are doing this, they're like 20 and females too, women as well. They're 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
You're so young. You're so young. You have so much more life. Like, just don't let a bad day ruin it. Like I always like to say now, it's like, I don't have bad days. I just had bad moments. Every day is a great day. I just had a
Yeah.
bad moment in that great day. Like anytime I
Yeah.
can just wake up, I can do things, I can move. It's a great day. Yeah, I guess that's my main message. As I said, I could go on for a long time in
Yeah.
philosophy about.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely going to have to do like a second and third or fourth, or we're just going to have to
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll
keep
come back
talking.
on.
But yeah, we'll have to definitely get back into these discussions because I have more questions, like so many that I didn't even write down, that I was just, to dive deeper into just thoughts and experiences and all of that. But for now, we'll give a little taste to everybody of what our conversations are about, and then we'll be able to. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.